They're gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
Welcome back to Never Fade, the NFT podcast. I'm your host, Faxx. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the positive feedback we're getting. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Never Fade NFT. We got an interesting episode lined up for you today. We're going to be joined by Bored Elon Musk, who has a background in gaming and also is a very active participant in Web3, happens to be the largest holder of Visualized Values Opepen collection, which is an NFT that we've been talking about quite frequently, produced by Jack Butcher. And so I'm really interested to get his takes on what's going on with gaming in Web3, what's going on with Opepen, and maybe get a little Twitter algo alpha from him. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him in. Thank you so much for joining us, Bored. How are you doing?
I'm great. I've been enjoying the show. I begged you guys to let me be a guest, and you said yes so gracefully and graciously. So really appreciate that we get to have a conversation now.
Yeah, no, I've seen you out there on the timeline and definitely appreciate your takes. And also the real reason that, we did invite you on is because you're the largest holder of Opepen, and that is a project that's dear and near to our hearts at the moment, as I'm sure it is yours. And we're going to get into that. But before we do, if you don't mind to just kind of give us a little bit of understanding of how you got into Web3.
So I guess I'm an OG, started buying Bitcoin on Mt. Gox back in 2013, learned all about trusting or not trusting centralized entities. And for me, it was really just about, I want to be able to move money all over the world really fast and not have to pay fees or get permission from Uncle Banker to do it. So I was like, hey, this digital money is pretty cool. And that's all it was, between 2013 and 2019, when I realized this can be more than just, lightning fast money. It can actually be used for lots of different things like art and gaming and collectibles and contracts. And so, like many of us in this space, got into sort of the collectibles and the art market and really just got interested in all the attention and money that was flowing into NFTs. But a few months into it, I kind of realized hey, I'm not this highfalutin art guy. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about fine art. What I do know about is games. And it really clicked for me okay, owning digital assets makes more sense in games than really in any other industry that's out there, in my opinion. And so I really kind of doubled down and started to explore what that meant and how I could participate, and also leverage some of my my real world background from the gaming industry to help people, bridge that intersection of NFT and blockchain technology and gaming.
Love that. So I appreciate also honesty, right? It's well, I appreciate the art, but I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a fine art collector or curator necessarily. But it sounds like gaming is your thing. So you want to give us a little background about what you're building in gaming? Because I noticed that you're up to something here.
Yeah. So as I guess important context, I spent most of my real world career completely separate from Bored Elon Musk, working in the gaming industry. I spent most of that time working for a very large Japanese gaming publisher, helped launch hardware, software, got to interact with some of the mightiest game industry veterans and titans in the world. It's still kind of surreal, basically having that experience. But I left that world in 2020 because I was really interested in the future of gaming and where it was going. And a lot of that hinged on this idea of players having more rights and ownership of digital property that they valued so much. And so I started a company called Boardbox, and that's very much meant to be the Steam store of Web3. Basically, if you want to play a game and you want to find new games to play and you actually want to own the things inside of those games, we're going to help you discover those items. And there was a moment that I had that kind of led me down the path. I used to play this card game called Hearthstone, and it was similar to Magic the Gathering or Pokemon. And I had spent over $1,000 on these card packs over the course of a year. And one day I just decided to stop playing, and it dawned on me why can't I sell my stuff to other people? right? I can sell my old video games that are physical to other people. I can sell my like trading cards to people. I can't sell my game stuff, but these are things that I like put my heart and soul into. So that was like kind of the moment where I realized, okay, yeah, there is a place for this. We need to get back to the time when like you owned physical game media, but it doesn't need to be physical. It just needs to be a thing that you own. And so,
and that's so strange, when you think about it. It's like having a physical game, a cartridge back in the day, or a disc, or something like that you actually that you possessed. It should be almost impossible to trade, right? Being able to find a trade network is hard, and then it's where GameStop and all the kind of like independent game stores really helped those people meet. And when you experience that from a digital perspective, where you're purchasing assets, they're assets to you, with outside the what an actual securitization is, but they are possessions. I guess that's probably a better word. They're possessions to you in that experience. And it feels like they're so easy to consume. They're easier to consume than something physical. It's puzzling that that same network to download isn't there for you to upload. That had to be pretty jarring.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people will say, well, most of the media we consume now, I don't need to own it anymore, right? Like we stream music on Spotify, we watch movies on TV, but, and like even books and music, right? Like people used to proudly display those things on their shelves because they wanted to show off their collection. But video games are not the same, because video games are something you contribute to. You put thousands of hours potentially into a game to build up your characters, to level up your stats. You don't contribute to a book or to music or to a TV show. So it is different, and you should have more ownership in this type of media than you do in others. And I think that all things being equal, if games are amazing that are Web3 enabled, that is going to just be like the default, and it will force all of the major game publishers to basically follow in suit and let you own your stuff. But yeah, it's very jarring. I think like honestly, we have come to this conclusion very early before the masses have, and that's okay. I'm trying to be the patient and educational, sort of voice, explaining to people why it makes sense to think this way, and encouraging game studios to think this way too, so they can start building good examples of games that are going to bring people in to the space.
Yeah, and one thing that's really fascinating right now is there's so many 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are in Web3 that are almost reviving their childhood experiences. Just, talking with Jack on our last episode, he went into his Pokemon experience and ripping packs and feeling that feeling. The digital native generation that's coming up right now, and for people who don't know what digitally native means, it means that they're interacting with technology before they can read, which is pretty impressive and powerful and a crazy dynamic. There are so many people in these generations that are age 3 to 15 that when they're 30 to 50, they're going to remember all those things that they collected on these games that they can't hold on to anymore unless they have a login. It's almost tragic if you think about it.
It is. And like the reality is, like most of us who collect stuff, we don't do that to sell it. It just sits on our shelves forever. Like that Kobe Bryant jersey is never going to leave your wall, probably. It's worth money. But you just want to display it. And the same goes for my game collection, for my Lego collection, for my card collection. And there's like that magic of the tangible that, is a little bit lost. Like you used, the example of kids today growing up, like they don't go to a toy store and walk around and like pick out a toy. They go watch a YouTuber and then they go order it on Amazon, and that's cool. There's like, it's a different kind of magic, but I think definitely a lot of people in their, late 20s, 30s, and 40s are trying to kind of revitalize a little bit of what they grew up with.
But here's the thing, right? Like when you look at like a collectible, like a jersey, right? We know that the value of a collectible like this will fluctuate with extrinsic factors that are going on in the economy and things like this. but ultimately we do expect it to hold value, whether or not we're actually holding it to keep and pass down to generations, or buying it to sell it. But that's the thing with game assets that I worry about the most, which is that a lot of these games, newer games especially, my understanding is they kind of have like a short life cycle. Like it's like the hot game at the time. Yeah, there's a lot of value that spins up while it's hot, but after it winds down, like, isn't there going to be potential for it to lose value? Like, that's a part of this that gives me the most pause.
No, that's totally fair. I mean, the lifespan of the average game is going to be, probably less than 5 years. And then you have a few outliers that are just timeless. Like people are still playing Age of Empires 2 and Grand Theft Auto 5 and just like over 10 years after the release. And those are kind of those ongoing games that I think will be good places to, if you're in it to like hold value and for something to get really pricey, that's the kind of game that, where that's going to happen. But the bulk of games, will be short-lived. And that means the entry points have to be lower as well, right? So we're not talking about NFTs that cost $10,000. They cost $5 and maybe they go up to 100 and that's all it is. But realistically, when you want millions and millions of people playing video games, it has to be that. I mean, that goes for NFTs too, right? Like we're all in this little bubble where everyone just kind of throws around 5 ETH like it's nothing. But that's not reality. We're in like this really weird span of time where that just has been normalized. But yeah, the masses mean we're talking in, 2 digits or less for an NFT, and it's not about trading. It is really just about the idea of ownership and possession. Like 95% of NFTs in the future are going to be things you just hold and cherish as a collectible, not things you think about constantly selling, because that is how you treat your actual collectibles in your real life. You don't plan on selling them. You plan on willing them to your kids or showing them off on your shelf.
Yeah, we've kind of plugged in Web3 into a trading network almost by accident, like I know for me, for instance, like holding apes, I held them because of my experience. I did not hold them to have the secondary run up as fast as they did. It's like to be 443x in value from mint price adjusted to US dollar basically 2 years from the day of launch was not an expectation. It's actually a burden, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's like my Trippy Ape, that's my PFP, is it's so much of a part of me that it doesn't even compute what a secondary market value is. Do you feel that purchasing and collecting in the gaming world, do you feel that is a form of well, let me ask that differently. What do you feel that is a form most of? And I could not, without leading, just as an example, like, do you feel that's a form of expression, or what do you think that main psychological driver is of purchasing A and collecting B?
I think in games, as opposed to in the NFT space overall, is in gaming, it's more about achievement, right? Like if you're playing a traditional game and you have a certain skin and you can only earn that skin after you've played 10,000 hours or had this many kills or whatever it is, you're kind of a badass. And that was related to something you accomplished. As opposed to the NFT space, either you got lucky or you have a lot of money, right? It's kind of like a Lamborghini. Like if you have enough money, you can go buy a Lamborghini. And in the real world, that's a flex to basically say that you have a bunch of money. But I don't know if you achieved that, right? I don't know if you earned that money or if you just got it from your dad or your mom or whatever. So in gaming, there's a lot more clarity around you earning it. Like obviously people can cheat and go buy an account from somebody else. That happens. So as it relates to NFTs in gaming, I definitely would love to see more items that people can acquire through achievement versus through acquisition. If you just want to like look cool and it's a skin that doesn't have anything associated with it from an achievement standpoint, that's totally fine. But I think that's like the clear differentiator and motivator for gaming is flexing what you've been able to do and why you're better than the competition.
So this is fascinating, and you're kind of breaking my mental model on this a little bit, because I've always seen, this is not, I'm not proud of it, but I've always seen game publishers as like evil corp. And I've always seen them as like closed networks and not opening up APIs, and in my mind just kind of saying like that's bad and that there's evil corp. But I think, what you're kind of explaining is like they're aligning to their business models and metrics pretty purely, in the sense that like by not opening up a secondary market for these assets, they are, some could argue that they're keeping the purity of, earning on skill-based assets as core to their users, a core to their business.
I think that's fair. I think that they can open up marketplaces for just cosmetic things that, make you look cool, or they match your personality. But when it comes to achievement-based stuff, yeah, you cannot have a secondary market for that stuff, because it breaks the game, right? Everybody talks about this idea of pay to win breaking games. And it's funny because like even in real world sports, there's a little bit of pay to win, right? Like a team that has way more money in pro sports can afford better players, and they go on to win more championships. Like that's a known thing. But they try to level the playing field with drafts and all that stuff. But yeah, to like game publishers' credit, they have stopped these marketplaces to somewhat preserve the game. But there's also a nefarious evil corp side of it, which is they don't want competition, right? Because if I'm Activision and I'm selling you these digital items, the transaction is publisher sells item to person A, and that's the end of it, right? But if person A can buy from the publisher, or they can also buy from their buddy, now there's competition for the publisher not selling that item because it got sold from another player. And so I think that's the real motivation for why they don't want to get into this space.
Sure.
They're just making money, and you don't want to turn that off until you have to.
Sure. I think this is a fascinating distinction. And I think it's a miscategorization for a lot of people in the space, included myself prior to having this conversation, is that I kind of felt the gaming argument was always a ownership and freedom to transact argument. I kind of thought they went hand in hand, but it sounds like from your perspective, and not to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like from your perspective, this is an argument of ownership and not necessarily freedom to transact. Like, not saying that you're anti-transact, but I am saying that you're pro-ownership, and those things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, it cannot be just like pure market dynamics, because ultimately the game itself must be preserved, because if you destroy the game by allowing just like complete transactions of any activity or object, then the demand to play the game goes away, and then all that stuff goes to zero. And so that's a delicate balance. And so I actually think that like Web3 gaming does need to be a fine balance of centralization and decentralization, and the best game designers will figure out what that balance is. But pure freedom to transact is going to be a really difficult thing to establish in a gaming environment. And I think that's okay. And everyone can just kind of decide what their comfort level is in terms of like what is controlled by the game studio and what is not.
We've had some combos on the podcast with people who are producing, Web3 gaming environments. And the recurring theme is that like play to earn is a farce. And like even that term is kind of like being retired, and it's moving towards like a play to win, which is very much more like a skill-based, achievement-based concept. I believe you're familiar with what Pixel Vault is rolling out with Reboot. Do you have any like input on kind of what you've seen so far with Reboot and what Pixel Vault's doing, and where you think how you think that's going to impact the space?
Yeah, I like what they're doing. I think ultimately play to earn, the question is, where does the money come from? And so money does exist that can pay players, and that's basically two categories. One is money that would have been spent on marketing the game and on advertising. Instead of that going to Facebook ads and all that kind of stuff, the game can just pay players, right? Like you want to promote the game, you want to do stuff, we're going to pay you basically to market our game to your friends. This is something that has existed for a very long time. And honestly, that's a better scenario. I'd rather game publishers pay the players to go promote it than, give it to Apple. The other side is the players fuel the money, right? So you put money into the game. If you're really good, then you're in the top end, you get a cut of the prize pool. And it's basically like a raffle mechanic, right? Everybody puts in a ticket. Only a few people at the top get the prize. So both of those work. Reboot is basically doing a very elaborate version of that. And I think it's fine, right? I mean, especially like if they take a very small cut and most of the proceeds go back to the players, that's cool. I mean, it's kind of like poker tournaments, right? Like the casino takes a small rake, but ultimately you want to win the prize pool that is fueled by all the other players. You just got to beat the players, and it's completely skill-based. And the biggest challenge will just be, cheating and making sure that the playing field is fair.
Yeah. So with this said, like, let's kind of talk about the Yuga key. Like, let's talk about the key that came from Jimmy.
Jimmy's butthole.
Yeah, Jimmy's butthole. Because this is in what you said. And I don't get like, I mean, I'm open-minded, so I definitely will change my opinion. But I think you just flipped my opinion so fast. On like soul-bound NFTs, because I was really anti soul-bound NFTs, and you have really laid out a path that I think there's a very clear use case for soul-bound NFTs, and I do kind of want to go into like a derivative nature of that, but I want to parking lot that and talk about the key that came from Jimmy's butthole. In this case, the top player that earned this key was free to transact, and they got a 1,600 ETH offer for it, and they did sell it. Now, how do you feel about that?
It's kind of like winning a gold medal at the Olympics and selling it. A little bit of that. So I kind of wish that it was soul-bound, and in this case, the key will have like utility. Like a gold medal doesn't really have utility other than you get to be on the Wheaties box or like, get some commercials out of it. But like, it doesn't really have any utility. Presumably this gold key will do something very special. And it's a little bit of, like a privilege, I guess, to be that holder. And so the key is kind of like the Lamborghini analogy. Like some rich person decided they want to buy it and have that flex, and that's fine. The purist in me who designs games doesn't like it. I think that if you have this extremely rare, coveted thing, you gotta earn it, and you gotta hold it forever. And that is part of the lore of the game. And so to me, it kind of cheapens the experience that it was free to transact. And I respect both perspectives, but I think in this case, like, it would have been more special to me if it was held on to by the.
I'm bullish. I'm bullish on the purist lens here. I mean, I think this is fascinating. Do you think that the blockchain remedies a little bit of not all being lost in this case, because we can trace it back to oh my gosh, I'm forgetting Mongol. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that we can
Mongrel.
Mongrel.
I think. Yeah. The gamer, correct?
Right. So like, does the blockchain as a ledger at least remedy a little bit of that for you, that we can tie it back to Mongrel and that can never be taken away from his wallet attribution?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the fact that you can kind of trace its existence from wallet to wallet, it definitely helps. And you can always prove that, he did it, or the wallet that he controls did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess so. I think that's a happy medium for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I appreciate the purity of your guys' thoughts, but I can speak for most of the NFT community in saying we were very happy to see this key sell for 1,000 Ethereum. Let me tell you, nobody I know was complaining
Honestly,
about that.
If I was Yuga, I would have seen that, and I would have said, hey, keep it, and we'll just give you a prize pool. We'll just pay you the money. And they definitely have it. They definitely have the money. You know what I mean? That would have been a cool move. Maybe next time.
I think there's a happy medium though on these mechanics that I think the blockchain does allow for, and it's kind of I think it leads us into the Opepen conversation, which is timely right now. But this idea of derivatives off of it, which is the thing I parking lotted or the thing I put in the parking lot, but derivatives I think could add power to this situation where, you know, maybe you are soul bound to a key, and that is, you know, assigned to you, but then maybe you could shell out utility in a official derivative format. Like, in this case, let's say Mongrel has the key. He's getting offers for this key, but he actually can't sell the key, but he can open up a dApp that allows him to mint a derivative of the key, and maybe like addition 0 inherits utility. I think those could be fascinating use cases. Do you have any kind of like, if you just could play mentally with that, any opposition or problems with that?
I like that. The key allows you to bestow, you know, certain powers or have the ability to do certain things, and you can sell that. The object remains with you, but the powers from the object get transferred to somebody else. I think that's cool. I like that level of thinking. And I think ultimately, you know, in gaming, like, you want to achieve something and win a certain skin or a gun or a rare item because you have millions of people around you playing this game, and this game exists. We're all just kind of playing in this idea of like what the key will be used for. We don't know, right? We don't know what the other side exactly is going to end up being. We don't even know if this key, you know, is going to be like more of a BAYC thing or an other side thing. So there's just a lot of unanswered questions, but I appreciate that they were able to get so much attention around like a pretty casual game, and get the attention of a lot of people in the traditional gaming world. So overall, you know, we're picking holes, right, at this a little bit, but like overall, probably the most successful example of a Web3 game to date. So much kudos to the crew at Yuga.
Yeah, so it's like the game inside the game. This is all like the inception, you know, playing out. So while we're on this BAYC topic, let me ask you, Bored. You were one of the candidates for the Ape Coin Council. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about like why, and also maybe your experience with Yuga and kind of that journey for you?
Yeah, I mean, at the time that I decided to run, I really felt like ApeCoin could be leveraged as one of the key forms of currency across Web3 gaming. Mainly because one of the largest Web3 games being built, you know, would for sure be using it, which is the other side. And so I kind of ran on that platform, which is like, I want to be the guy with the gaming background to help drive in that direction. I think that over time since then, I have been less enthusiastic and bullish about the specific use cases of ApeCoin, and also found the overall community to be somewhat restrictive around taking risks and trying new things, to the point where it almost feels like an HOA, if anyone is familiar with that term, where like nothing really gets done and people just kind of argue a lot. So I'm currently a little
many people on boards, not many things being done.
Not a lot of things being done, right? So that, and also again thinking from a gaming lens, you know, ApeCoin runs on Ethereum. It's very expensive to transact. In its current format, does not work well as a gaming token because it's just too expensive to send it back and forth. So if it ever goes to an L2, I'll be really excited about it as a gaming token. Otherwise, right now, you know, I don't see a lot of opportunities.
I'm kind of assuming that ApeCoin, when it's actually being used for gaming, in a more dynamic way, was probably going to roll over to Polygon. Just saying that based on some observations around kind of like Polygon's early involvement with Yuga at some of their events and things like this. I mean, what's your take on that?
No, I think that's a very likely scenario, and I hope it happens. It needs to be an L2. for sure. Yeah, but until then, I think what's more important for Yuga is focus on building the environments and marketplaces that will make use cases for the Ape Coin. Because right now, in its current stance, it is a collectible item that lets you stake and get more collectible items, and it's not really being used as kind of a currency or as a token for any sort of particular purpose. I think it'll get there, but it's a whiles away.
You think the capitalization of ApeCoin was too early?
I do. Yeah, put simply, I do. I think that all the projects needed to be further along before, and it was rushed a little bit. And I think it's been, you've kind of seen like the lack of acceleration of projects and sort of investments from the foundation, the ApeCoin Foundation, that have really just made everything feel like it's kind of crawling. So I personally feel like when the other side is within like 3 to 6 months of launching an alpha, that's when you launch ApeCoin. And I think it was done a bit prematurely.
Yeah, interesting, because from a regulatory standpoint, it's like if they didn't drop it when they did, maybe they wouldn't have the opportunity to drop it, And I think that the staking, although it's geo-fenced in the US, technically, is the most prominent utility of any NFT in the universe right now, in my personal opinion. Even right now, like there's applications that allow for people to use, parent staking and shared staking, not financial advice, but basically where you can earn ApeCoin without staking ApeCoin, but rather only staking the NFT. And that's pretty interesting.
I'm always really excited for anything that brings NFT people into DeFi. I think that simple staking mechanisms are a good way to teach people to keep their stuff for the long period of time. Like when you lock up your assets and you're getting money, it makes you less likely to get itchy and start trading NFTs. And a lot of NFT people could stand to just park their cash in DeFi instead of buying, whatever the next animal that you're.
It's really funny, and I think it's extremely intellectual to consider ApeCoin as a collectible. I don't think many people would put that definition on ApeCoin. I think it's a fascinating take, and it's made me kind of think about my relationship with LP positions through Uniswap with the V3 NFT that gets minted in your wallet. I, for the longest time, have always looked at that V3 NFT of an LP position as unnecessary. But I'm just now reflecting on how much I view LP positions as collectibles. And I think that's a fascinating psychological switch that I think ApeCoin could probably really take advantage of in staking. I'm really just kind of I'm thinking out loud right now, but I hold on to, going to your comment about being itchy, I hold on to my LP positions as collectibles as a form of not getting itchy to use. And I have a hard time giving up LP positions when I know I need to move them to capture more transaction fees, because I'm not incentivized to keep old positions. And I think that's an avenue that ApeCoin could definitely explore.
Yeah, well, it certainly stopped me from selling all of my apes for a while I was staking from another country. So, I'm down to 2 apes, though. I had to move some cash to buy some Opepen. So I decided that for me, I wanted to decrease my sort of stake in the Yuga ecosystem and do something new, because I had put 2 years into that and I had my fun, and now I'm excited to move on.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit, because just a few days ago, I had tweeted that, you were the number 2 holder of Opepen with, over 500, but someone had taken some initiative to kind of just collect maybe 20 more than you. And then I checked back this morning, and you are the number 1 holder of Opepen and have over 600 now. So is that like a competitive thing, Or you think like, what's going on here, Bored? Like, where are you coming from? How are you waking up with 600 Opepen, my guy?
Guys, I'm not going to show up on this show as the number 2 holder, you know. That's not how you present yourself as a guest. I knew I was coming on the show. I knew you were fans. I'm like, I got to get the number 1 spot.
Put him in the no fade zone, Faxx.
Let's go, dude. I love to hear it. I was thinking that too. I was like, man, like he didn't want to be number 2. That's what I was like. He didn't want to come on this show number 2. So we have the number 1 holder of Opepen in the universe, on the planet today, here with us, Bored Elon Musk. Why are you holding so much Opepen?
So, I mean, since the apes, honestly, nothing really has captivated my attention as being really different. So, like, the reason I loved the Bored Apes back in 2021 was they had all this storytelling behind the scenes. It was kind of like a comic book where they gave you enough information to paint a picture in your mind, but not paint the entire picture. And I thought that was so cool. I had never really seen anything like it with a collectible before. So that really synced with me. And then since then, you've seen kind of derivatives of it and slight evolutions, but nothing that really upended the model of this idea of a collectible. And, you know, Jack is somebody I've known for a while. We've talked back and forth for a couple of years. Like, he's a brilliant thinker. I saw what he did with checks. That was super compelling as kind of like this one-off art piece. And I thought checks was super interesting. But Opepen really captured my attention because I like, when I think about creative projects, I like there to be a balance of constraint and flexibility. Checks to me is kind of like Bitcoin. Like, it's very, very rigid and has a specific set of rules, and it will always be that way. Opepen is something that, you know, has this singular through line, but is actually going to be really different. And what I love about it is a point that Jack made publicly, which is that most PFPs, when you're looking at them, you know, on Twitter or whatever, it's really hard to differentiate one from another. You know, it's a monkey, but this one has a hat, but this one has like an earring, but you can't really tell. And I think Opepen has been able to show examples of something that looks the same and yet has so much dramatic difference in it. And for me personally, it's just kind of my own gut. I've not really had any PFP project sort of like move me. And I don't like, again, I'm not an art guy. I'm not a fine art guy, whatever, but nothing has really moved me the way that Opepen has. And it's like kind of a big bet I'm making. I believe in Jack. If this all goes to zero, I'm not going to be mad because I know he's a smart guy and, you know, he did something unique and creative. But to me, like, I legitimately think what he's building is going to be the next generation CryptoPunk. Like, if AI art becomes the norm, what he's built is going to be one of the first examples of that. And I just think it's awesome. So yeah, I decided to shift a lot of my, you know, Yuga assets over to him. And I'd rather bet on something that's new. And I'm super excited and honored, honestly, to be number 1. I don't know how long that'll last, but I definitely want to participate in the ecosystem for a long time.
Fantastic. I mean, I think what you said is bold, and we're gonna blast it over Twitter until our very last breath, because I +1 it. I'm bullish on it. I think that you make a great comparison between like Bitcoin and ETH here on the collections. I think it's very natural to make a CryptoPunk ape kind of connection here as well, with the constraints that is on checks and with the freedom that comes to Opepen. I think it's very fascinating that Opepen is maybe going to be classified as a PFP project, and I'm most excited to get Opepen results on my wall. I do see it as like a fine art, like a subjective fine art project. Do you think that there's room to have a PFP and fine art collection be simultaneously represented in a single collection?
I think so. And I think this is like the closest example of that that intersection taking place, because I think most PFPs are meant to look more like kind of gaming oriented PFPs. You know, they're cute, they're fun, they show off, they really pop on a social feed. And fine art doesn't do that very well. But like choosing this really simple silhouette, an object, can be a PFP. I mean, honestly, like I've built a lot of equity in my avatar, in my PFP, and I don't use my apes or other stuff because, like, I guess, like, not to sound too egotistical, but like I think my personal PFP is more valuable than any other PFP. But I actually considered, like, depending on how things go with Opepen, like depending on how much of my own creativity I can put into it and create my own version of it, I might switch my PFP to an Opepen because it's something that I think will stand out dramatically. It'll make me part of a community, but it'll still be like distinctly me. For me to use an ape right now on Twitter makes very little sense because it's almost like I'm lending my large platform to advertise somebody else's IP. But if I get to put my fingerprint on making a custom Opepen, I made that, not somebody else. And I think that's something that I have not seen in the space in a very long time.
And that's kind of the alpha that I don't think a lot of people have necessarily caught on to here with Opepen. So if you think about it, because this is still cooking, it's not finalized, and we don't know all of the mechanics as of this recording. However, if there's a scenario where blanks are going to be revealed and the way that those blanks are used is up to the holders of those blanks. And now let's say that there could be rare, like the one of one is a blank. And now I'm holding this one of one blank. And just by the virtue of the rarity, it's going to be very noticeable in the collection, even as a blank. Now, what could that blank be used for? Well, let's say that I have a brand and I have an advertising budget, and I decide I want to use that advertising budget to generate a branded Opepen that is rare. The first thing I'm going to need to do is acquire one of those blank rares, if that's even possible. Or let's say that I'm the Pixel Vault up down, and we decide collectively that we want to acquire a handful of these rare blanks, and we want to control the IP that goes into that particular Opepen. But in order to get those rare blanks, we're going to have to get through Bored Elon Musk because he's holding out. Now, what's his price on those? You know what I'm saying? So suddenly this can become this like game theory / branding opportunity, like wrapped up into one. And like, I don't know for sure that that's the direction this is going. My point being that I don't think that most people who are currently not that interested in Opepen have really thought through those kind of next steps of this. This is chess, not checkers. We don't know where this is going, but my personal feeling is that the genie is still in the bottle. And when the genie comes out of the bottle, that's when people are going to say, oh, shit. And that's when the FOMO's get hit.
Yeah, I think if it were me, I like the blanks idea a lot. The rarest ones would basically give you more potential traits that you could input into Opepen AI. So if you go to this platform and you basically have a blank and you can create your own Opepen, the rarest ones let you input like 8 traits, and the semi-rare ones only give you 3 or 4. But the ultra, like the rarer it is, the more you can manipulate it, and that's where you can really make it your brand and tailor the image to what you want.
I think there's also this concept going on right now with the mechanism as it's been released by Jack via Twitter, that time is playing a very weird role in this mechanism, I feel, because I think Jack did such a good job with checks in eliminating time from the mechanism. He was very wise and very smart about diffusing bad behaviors by de-risking with time mechanics driving impulses.
Right.
It feels like the drops in this case, 200 drops and 80 reveals and times and additions and provenance. It feels like provenance might be rushed in this mechanism. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I mean, as I think as he has put it, it's sort of like the cleanest option right now, and there's a desire to move a little bit faster just to kind of capture the moment and the magic. But you know, the only real other option I think is just it being random and it feeling like a loot box, which is kind of what every other project does. And then you let the market sort it out. But I do appreciate rewarding people who have put in time. Like, you know, not to show my own company too much, but like we have a gaming membership, and we, like, everyone who owns a membership to Boardbox accrues points, and those points are soul bound to their wallet, and they can use those points to get game items in our store. So like, if you sell your box, those points don't go with you; they stick with you. But basically, we use time as a mechanism of loyalty. Like, you need time to hold this item so that you accrue points, and then you can go get your stuff. And that is meant to basically offset the degens, because our promise to game studios is we're going to bring you people who actually care and want to play games. And if you're willing to play games, you're going to put in the time. Whereas the degens will just flip stuff. So in Jack's case, I think it's probably the best option he has right now. At this stage, and as he said, like, eventually Opepen and Faxx will kind of be two separate entities, but right now he's kind of relying on this community he's built up of true believers to direct where the initial distribution of, you know, of these new NFTs will go. And I respect it. I don't love it as somebody who doesn't really have a lot of checks, but I respect the thoughtfulness of his approach.
So as Faxx had mentioned, you know, the genie's still in the bottle. We're in a fluid state right now. But I think something that has me a little bit backwards on the provenance, and maybe a little bit of color on why I feel like provenance might be rushed here, is if Opepen AI has the power and the opportunity that I believe it does have, and I see Jack as being a philosopher of AI on the blockchain with this endeavor, I feel that the Opepen AI will mature over time. And I feel like the final reveal might be the most valuable provenance in the system.
Yeah, so like basically implying, like, you know, that the earlier editions will somehow be more valuable. That kind of made me scratch my head too, because I think, you know, we're all wired to be like, what's next? And also over time, every project evolves and you learn more. And if he's going to have like 200 versions of this come out over time, and there's fewer and fewer blanks left, yeah, I would think the last 10 or 50 would be way more interesting than the ones that come.
Right.
You know, or maybe it's a bell curve, like the first few are valuable and then the last few. Basically.
And I could see, you know, if the opportunity was there for Bored Elon to stake, you know, 160 Opepen to buy the last two blocks, I could see you wanting to do that.
Yeah, I would be very open to that idea for sure.
Yeah, there's like, I think you guys are right that the early ones, because they're going to be the first of their kind, and that itself, the provenance there will carry value, but also that over time, Jack's career, we're betting in general, is going to advance. There's going to be more doors opening for him. His skills will continue to be refined. Maybe the actual AI outputs, you know, will be improved. So you're right that, you know, those ones that are later potentially, you know, could be more valuable. But I think like the grand scale bet is that the entire collection over time, if we're comparing Jack to the he's 2023 Snowfro. Okay, that's what I see. If we're right about that, then imagine that the squiggles, like there were still some blanks to be minted out. And like, does that mean that the ones that were minted out in the middle are less valuable? It's like the rising tide lifts all boats. And then the actual like mechanism of having a fixed supply of 16,000, but only releasing 80 at a time, and having a fixed number of drops, 200 drops. So what you've done here is you've created transparency. People know there's only going to be this many. There's only going to be this many drops. But what's undefined and is still in his hands, the power that he has, is the timing of those drops. So what it allows him to do is decide, based on how the secondary is reacting, what's going on in the marketplace, all these other factors, time those drops. And I think we've already seen that, like, he has a good pulse on what's going on in the day-to-day. So like, he's in this powerful position where he can decide when those drops come out. And then he's totally bucking the degen trend of the post-reveal dip, because guess what? When those 80 drop, okay, maybe the commons are going to get floored, right? Maybe. We don't even know what a common is. We don't know. What if the common is there's 40, or, what if there's 40 X copies? That's not going to get floored, right? So what's going to happen is people are going to be hesitant to floor those early ones because they're early. And then if the collection continues to kind of build and grow and collect interest, and more people are talking about it, and the economic energy within the network is building over time, then those little 80 that drop each time, you shouldn't really affect, like, you shouldn't cause a dump, right? So that's kind of, and I'm getting some alpha here from our producer, Hazy B, that as we speak, Jack is continuing to drop some information in the transparency thread. And the reality is, by the time this episode comes out, there probably will be more information. But like, that's kind of like, I'm confused a little about why you explain why you're saying it's rushed, but like, the time is not defined, right? He's in control of that time. So if he's in control of that time, how could it be rushed?
No, that's fair. And it's, taking it back to gaming, like, it's kind of like the fog of war mechanic. When you start a game, you've got a little bit of the entire world that the game shows you, and you run around and then you get leveled up, and then you can go to new places. And so if you ever played Breath of the Wild or Skyrim, it's like by the end of the game, it's all revealed, but it's fun to have it unrevealed at first. And so him doing this in stages completely, as you said, bucks the trend of just like, let's just show the entire game up front, and then you kind of get bored of it. It's like, it's tapping into that psychological defect we have as humans to want to know what's in the box, what's behind the wall, right? And so doing that slowly at his own pace when he's ready and can do something cool, I think that's super exciting. It's not something I've really seen done in the PFP space. And I do really hope he ends up like collaborating with other artists where they put their fingerprint on the items. I think that would be cool. I mean, if he wants to like hand create 16,000 Opepen, I mean, man, more power to him. That's going to be crazy, and it'll take a long time to do it. But it would be awesome to have certain editions from certain artists and have them treated as like collections within collections. I think all of this is super unique, and I appreciate that he's like listening to all of us jokers and taking the feedback and, clearly like doing this with a lot of his own input and thought and experience, but also layering in what the community wants. So
he did just Bored, he did just confirm that it will involve everyone in curation of drops on top of established rarities. My work, AI generated, artist collabs, community generated.
Boom.
So
there
it
you
looks
go.
like
Yeah.
it looked. he didn't say that, but well, he's saying involve everyone in creation and curation. So it's not even clear if visualized value is the curator. It looks like he's going to probably allow some governance for curation.
I guess Bored, as the largest holder of Opepen, in this interesting, economy that we're in Web3 and NFTs, like, what is it that you want? Like, what would you like to see? Like, what is it that you would be like, yeah, this is why I'm going to continue to hold or continue to accumulate these?
I think there's a good chunk of these that I'm going to just hold on to forever because they're going to be true collectibles for me that hopefully I have, to put a fingerprint on. And the other is, as like an investor and as somebody who wants to shine the light on truly unique creative things that are different, I see this as an opportunity for me to promote Jack because I've seen a lot of his work over the period of time. And frankly, like, even though he's built up a pretty good following, I think a lot of it has been underappreciated and hasn't really gotten the notoriety it deserves. So like, I want to help make sure that people go back into his archives and see all the brilliant stuff he's done. And then from an investor standpoint, I just think that this is kind of like, it's either a 0 or 1,000. I mean, I think this is basically a Bored Ape. Like, it's so unique from anything I've seen. And it has the potential to be something that is coveted by, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And I feel like the steam has just kind of come out of, other collections and projects that I've been invested in. And so I wanted to direct my, sort of monetary energy towards something that excited me.
I think to clarify, and sorry to cut you off, but to clarify, you're talking monetary 0 or 1,000, like X and multiples. But I think just in talking to you this hour, it seems like you very much take an approach of your time as investment. And, like, you have a personal calculator of ROI into buying this. What does the outputs of that ROI look like to you?
I think worst case scenario, I double my money. But, best case scenario, it's 10x or higher.
Sorry, I'm more so talking like in the scenario it goes to 0. Monetary, like, I still think ROI, personal ROI, you get something out of it, and I'm curious what that upside is to you.
Got it. Yeah. No, I think this is just, it's like a magical moment we're experiencing in this overlap of AI and crypto, and it's going to be a collection that I think lasts for a very long time. And I sort of appreciate the fact that, kind of like my account, it was done on a lark. Like, I didn't start Bored Elon Musk with these grand intentions or like the desire to get millions of followers. I was just like, I like to experiment. Let's try this out and see where it goes. And 10 years later, it's a pretty big thing. And Jack has similarly said, has said, like, Opepen was kind of like an experiment. Like, let's just see where this goes. But along the way, he figured out what to do with it and how to harness that attention in the community. So yeah, if it goes to 0 and nobody cares, I'm not going to be upset about it. I feel like anybody who was early in the NFT space in 2021 can walk away and say, hey, you did pretty well. I certainly did. And, I now have the opportunity to experiment and take risks. And I want to do it on people that I believe in and I respect. And he's one of them.
Not to, hope this sounds okay, but we're betting on the jockey, not the horse here, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people share the sentiment that he is going to ascend and continue to, and the beauty of it, the Web3 mentality is he understands how the network benefits his project and one another. And like, I really think that this process he does with the transparency, taking feedback, it is a sign of his like values and his intent to like lift other people up along the way. and give people the opportunity to shine. So I would be remiss, Bored, if I didn't at least try to extract from you some Twitter algo alpha, considering that you have this like massive Twitter account and you've seen the transition under Elon Musk's leadership. So can we pivot a little bit here towards that and like what's going on with the Twitter algo? How can we break the algo? How can we make sure that this episode has the furthest reach possible? Can you share any insight there?
So, I mean, the biggest Twitter tip that people are often surprised to hear from me is prune your feed, meaning delete stuff that just doesn't really perform well, so that the first impression when somebody gets to your profile is a really positive one and is like the most compelling content. I've been doing that for almost all 10 years of this account, and it's worked really well. That doesn't necessarily...
So you just leave bangers. You just leave like 5 bangers at the top.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's ever tried or studied kind of how like sketch comedy works or improv comedy works, like a comedian goes and tests everything on a Tuesday night and then hears what people laugh at and sees what people don't laugh at, and then the next show they only use the bangers. So it's kind of the same idea. So I strongly recommend, like, you know, every few months you just go back over your feed, and the ones that are just duds, just delete them. Now that won't help you with the algorithm. I wish I could give you more insight into how the algorithm works, man, but it's, I don't know. Like I can still only on average get, you know, 15, 20K views per tweet, even with 1.7 million followers. So either I'm shadow banned or just remarkably boring and nobody wants to like pay attention to me. If you guys figure it out, let me know.
Man, well, I think we do have to have an episode on the open source now Twitter algo, and pick that thing apart. Apparently following, I did do a quick look into it, and following appears to be straight following. So if you go to the following tab, it does appear to be straight follow, no game, no gimmicks, no algo, which is fascinating. Need to do a deeper dive on that though.
There's a lot there. I think that's interesting what you're saying about deleting posts that don't perform well. And I think like the big thing is like it's additive. Like you could have a post that doesn't perform well, that gets, you know, a few likes, but it still, you know, adds up over time. So if you look at accounts that have grown fast over the last, you know, couple of years, it's usually accounts like, and I'm not talking about people who are like known celebrities that they have a following already. I'm talking about people who have come up from the mud and have grown their account. Usually they're people who are tweeting a lot and putting like, you know, just a lot of content out and kind of using the additive nature of things to their advantage. With that, I think we covered a lot here. We talked about gaming. We talked about just Web3 in general. We talked about Opepen. We touched a little bit on Twitter here. Good month. Do you have any more questions here for Bored Elon Musk before we let him go and wrap things up?
I mean, if we had the time, we could go another hour, but I do want to quickly pull up the visualized value diagram of building versus betting. Just Faxx, because he said, you know, we're betting on the jockey, not the horse. And I think like this is probably, besides the presence piece, this has probably been one of the most like moving diagrams Jack has ever put up, that I frequently go back and reference. And I think it's just a beautiful tale to building, like taking someone like Bored, who, you know, rolled aces on the Bored Ape mint and is now reinvesting and rolling on Opepen. Like, it's definitely building. It's not betting. You know, it's not temporal movements of taking the crosshairs at targets and having a shaky hand. This is definitely compounding effects of hunting value and hunting experience. So you love to see it as one of the top holders, and I can't wait to see how those Opepen mechanics unravel. And I'm very excited to continue talking about Bored Box, because I think, you know, Opepen is you as an Opepen holder is relevant today. I think you as a board box builder is way early, ahead of its time, and really excited to revisit that.
No, I appreciate it. Anybody who's a gamer, please do check out boardbox.io. Everyone can join for free. We're very early, as you said. And in the meantime, I will continue to, degen with you guys in the art space and the collectible space. But if anyone ever has gaming questions, honestly, tweet at me. I respond to pretty much anybody unless they're being a jerk. So, yeah. This time flew by. Thank you guys for taking the moment to chat with me. It was awesome, and can't wait to keep listening to the show.
Totally.
Yeah, we appreciate your support. We appreciate your input. Really was a pleasure to chat with you. I do anticipate there to be some Opepen kind of community spaces in the near future here. So hopefully we'll get to chat more during those. There we have it. Bored Elon Musk, a Twitter personality turned Web3 participant, who's also the number one. Also, we had the number one holder of visualized value checks on your shrimp though. And now we've had the number one holder of Opepen. This is kind of an interesting phenomenon here. I like the way that this guy thinks. Good. What did you think about that conversation?
Hey, I hope Moonbirds doesn't come at me too hard by calling this the collector's pod. You know what I'm saying?
I think so. I think I know what you're saying.
Listen. Great mind. Brilliant mind. Did not expect to have my perspective shifted real time so fast on gaming NFTs, and how I had that straight up wrong. I was really hung up on the freedom to transact value prop, and I think a solution of soulbound plus delegation of utility and derivatives of that soulbound NFT is big brained. And I love to hear his perspective. I love having him as a collector in the Opepens. I'm very motivated to join him in some tier of ranking, because it's those long minds that are in it for the XP, that are in it for the experience. And, asking him what his ROI is outside of monetary gain is important, because I don't think he necessarily articulated directly what kind of experience he's actually out there surfing for. And because I think he's in it for a human experience of watching one of the greatest philosophers of our time go down in real time.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to hear a perspective of somebody saying, well, why would I use my Bored Ape as my PFP when my PFP is more valuable? But if I could put my brand and spin it into an Opepen, there's a compelling reason to change my PFP there.
And that was directly influenced, if not attributed, to Jack, distinguishing that the uniqueness of PFPs get lost in the crowd. He said on our pod, right? Sorry, Jack, I got to say it. You did say on the pod that 9,980 CryptoPunks look commoditized. I'm paraphrasing the commoditization. I'm not paraphrasing the number. That's a bold statement. And if that's the single driver to make Opepen different, boy, we are watching history.
That's right. If you thought you knew what was going on in the NFT space, you have no fucking idea. Good month, Eve. He's flip-flopping every other episode on what he thinks about gaming and how this is all shaping up. And I want you guys to take a lesson from this man. You need to keep your eyes and your mind open. You need to stay fluid. You need to understand the metas. And you certainly cannot think that you know it all None of us do. That's why we do this podcast, to share information, to hear from some of the brightest people in this space, and share those thoughts with you guys. So thank you so much again for listening to another episode of Never Fade, the NFT podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube and comment on there with the term Bored Elon, and we're going to make sure that Good Month ETH sends you a Bored Ape.
Yeah, right. We're going to try to rally you up into a community so that we can talk about what you want next. Stay smooth-brained, fade rigidity, hazy, take us out.
That's a bad bet if the bag's checkless. About to burn back to back, flipping not cheap when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots.